Hello and welcome to Geography Goofs. I'm your host, Lori, and today I'll walk you through 10 common geographical mistakes, goofs, and misconceptions. Goof number 1. Greenland is a country. Actually, Greenland is not a country. Neither is Puerto Rico, nor Dubai. First, let's establish a definition of a country. This is how I define a country. A country should have space or territory with internationally recognized boundaries. That is, other countries, ideally all other countries, should recognize at least some of the boundaries. Some boundary disputes are okay. A country should have people that live there on a regular basis, as in continually inhabited. Thirdly, it should have its own economy and engage in foreign trade. And lastly, it should have sovereignty over the territory, and no one else should have power. That means it should be autonomous or self-governing. Going back to our definition of a country, Greenland does not meet those criteria. Greenland is a territory of Denmark, and although it's able to regulate its own trade, Denmark still has control over Greenland. Puerto Rico does not also meet those conditions. It's a commonwealth of the U.S. and therefore U.S. territory. It doesn't regulate its own trade and uses the U.S. dollar. Lastly, we have Dubai. Now, Dubai is one of 7 emirates that comprise the United Arab Emirates, and the United Arab Emirates altogether make up their own country. Goof number 2. The Sahara Desert is the world's largest desert. Now, for a region or area of land to be considered a desert, it needs to have less than 250 millimeters of rain per year. Now, using that criteria, the continent of Antarctica is the largest desert on Earth, and it has less than 51 millimeters of precipitation per year, and almost no vegetation. The Sahara, technically speaking, is the world's largest non-polar desert, because obviously it doesn't have any ice. Goof number 3. Commonly mistaken world capitals. Now this one's pretty straightforward. I have 3 countries below, in respective order, Canada, Australia, and Brazil. And in the bold, I listed the correct capital city. And below, in text that isn't bold, I have some cities that people might mistake to be the capital city. For instance, a lot of people might think that Sydney or Melbourne are the capitals of Australia, but that's incorrect. It's in fact Canberra. And a fun fact about that is that Canberra was created because Sydney and Melbourne were fighting over which of them should become the capital city. So as a result, the Australian Capital Territory, one of Australia's 7 states and territories, was created, and Canberra became the capital of that territory and of Australia. Goof number 4. South Africa's capitals. Now, South Africa gets its own slide because I think it's a very interesting case. Unlike most countries in the world, South Africa has 3 capitals to split up the 3 governmental divisions. Its administrative capital is Pretoria, the legislative capital is Cape Town, and the judicial capital is Bloemfontein, which is often forgotten. Despite popular belief, Johannesburg is not a capital of South Africa. However, its constitutional court sits there. Alright, now goof number 5 is a pretty common one. It's the addition of unnecessary articles. Now, articles are little words that you put in front of nouns, like a or the. So you might hear, for example, Ukraine. You might have heard it been referred to as the Ukraine. However, this is technically incorrect. And according to the Permanent Committee on Geographical Names, there are only 2 countries that should be officially referred to with the in front of it. And those are the Gambia in Africa and the Bahamas. Now, there are many countries that are often heard with the in front of them, such as the Maldives, or the Philippines, but it's worth noting that there's a trend in which countries have an article placed before them. So, the Maldives and the Philippines are both island nations, like they're comprised of groups of islands, and you wouldn't say, I'm going to Philippines, you would say, I'm going to the Philippines, and that's because it's a geographical area. And likewise, countries like the United States and the United Kingdom also carry the article because they're compound nouns with adjectives. In this case, the adjective is united. Goof number 6. Now this one is sometimes disputed. Many people consider Oceania to be a continent, right? And think about it when you name the 7 continents: North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Antarctica, and Australia. But is it Australia or Oceania? Because if you classify all the countries into respective continents, there will be countries such as the Solomon Islands or New Zealand that do not have a continent. What I think is that Oceania is merely a region rather than a continent, because although there is no official definition of a continent, when people say continent, they usually mean continental landmass, which is basically a gigantic landmass. So that's why South America is a continent, because it's so huge. However, there are obviously all these little island nations that are not part of the landmass, and so therefore I think do not necessarily belong to a continent, merely a region. However, and for sake of classification, when classifying countries into their respective continents, I would instead classify with Oceania as a region rather than have Australia as a country and a continent. Goof number 7 is about Greenland's actual size. Now, this goof isn't to say that Greenland is not large, because after all, it is the largest island in the world that is neither a continent nor a country, and Australia has that honor. Instead, this goof is here to say the real truth behind Greenland's size. Now, we have our old friend here, the Mercator projection, which I think is the most iconic map projection ever. And here's Greenland, and it looks to be around the same size as Africa. However, in reality, Greenland is actually 14 times smaller than Africa, as shown in this image. Now, why does it look this way? And a lot of people give the Mercator projection crap because, it isn't realistic. That isn't the way that land actually looks like. But I do think that it looks very proportionate and visually appealing. It's the kind of map that you would want on a wall as a decorative piece because it looks nice. And if you were to look at another map projection, such as the Gall-Peters projection, the map would look like if it had been stretched. And this is why I have no prejudice against the Mercator projection, even though it's a little bit deceptive. You just have to live with the awareness that some things aren't as big as they look. And Russia, isn't as tall as you think. It's a bit more squished, and you just need to have that awareness when you're looking at maps. Goof number 8, another one that I think is very common. A lot of people will use the terms the Netherlands and Holland interchangeably, when in fact they really aren't the same thing. The Netherlands is composed of 12 provinces, and you see them in a map right here. But the term Holland only refers to 2 out of the 12 provinces. Now, excuse my Dutch pronunciation. Holland is comprised of Noord-Holland, right here, and South-Holland, there, the yellow and the red respectively. And Amsterdam is in Noord-Holland, and they are the 2 most populated provinces of the Netherlands. And I've heard that some Dutch people will be offended if you refer to the Netherlands as Holland. So just be careful in which term you use, and if you are talking about North Holland or South Holland. It's perfectly acceptable to use the term Holland, but just bring that awareness upon yourself when referring to the Netherlands or Holland in conversation. For Goof 9, I've compiled a list of mispronunciations that are common. Now, it's important to note that your pronunciation of something will differ depending on whether you're native of the place or not, your accent, what phonologies you're used to, so all those factors will play a role in how you pronounce something. That being said, I've compiled a list of places that have either a widely or officially accepted pronunciation of their name. So we'll first start with this city, famous for its film festival. I've heard people say Cannes, but it's Cannes, and the S is silent. So make sure to note that. And then now we have this Scottish city, and I used to think it was Edinburgh, but I was very wrong about that. It's Edinburgh, and I've also heard Edinburgh, but natively it'll be a lot closer to Edinburgh. Then we have Iran and Iraq, not Iran or Iraq, because you did not ran. Iran, and Iraq. And this one I've also been pronouncing wrong for a great majority of my life. I used to think it was the Maldives. Maybe I thought it was the Maldives because it's an island nation, but it's actually Maldives. And lastly, we have this African country to the north of Nigeria. It is not Niger, even though its southern neighbor is Nigeria. It's actually Niger. Sounds French. For the last goof, I'll bring up something that seems to come up from time to time. Alaska's true affiliations. Now, I have a map of Alaska for you on the left side, and you can see that its only border is Canada. But if Alaska's only border is Canada, and it's part of the United States, then where are the rest of the United States? Well, as it turns out, the United States are down this way, southeast from Alaska's position. And some people have asked me before if Alaska is part of Canada, but the answer is no. It is not in any way part of Canada. Like geographically, politically, and officially, it is in no way affiliated with Canada, except for the fact that it borders Canada. Alaska is considered an exclave of the United States, and an exclave here defined as a part of a nation that is geographically separate from the main part of a nation. And as you can see, Alaska doesn't border the other 48 contiguous United States. So, to sum it all up, Alaska is not part of Canada, it is part of the United States. It simply doesn't border the other United States.